Chargers going to go for it on 4th and 2. And it's Lance throwing up top, touchdown, brought in by Will Dissly. He had 2 last year, and the 8th-year tight end out of Washington puts the Chargers on the board with the year's first score.
Welcome to NFL Daily, where we know we're just big football dorks because we're feeling warm and fuzzy inside here in Mike Tirico, calling American football game in July. Yeah, that was a touchdown by Trey Lance. I gotta say, this was one of the best Hall of Fame games of all time. There were actually a few little takeaways from it, but it was just nice to see a couple names we recognized with Trey Lance, with rookie Isaac DeSlaw. I'll get to a couple takeaways, but it's not gonna be much coming from the Hall of Fame game. We're gonna have a big conversation, really our first big primer to get you ready for fantasy football drafts. Just start thinking about what your strategy is gonna be, what to do at different positions, who you're looking for that has a good value. That's all coming up with Evan Silva and Pat Daugherty. So that is an awesome conversation. First, I'm gonna hit very quick few items of news and the Hall of Fame game, and then we'll talk a little fantasy. Since we taped the fantasy segment, Terry McLaurin decided he wants out of Washington. Whether this is a decision that is just driven to get a bigger contract, obviously that's a big part of it. Ian Rappaport of NFL Network points out that it's a long shot. Usually you don't see a team that's trying to contend make a trade at this time of the season. But Terry McLaurin, who's been there forever, felt like he had no other card to play, and it would be crazy for them to trade him. But I will say the old Washington regime, they would do something stupid like that. And this is a good test of the new ownership, what the difference is going to be. And I will say other teams can make it uncomfortable for both Terry McLaurin and his agent and the Commanders, because there are absolutely teams out there that will let him know, if he doesn't already, how valuable he would be if Washington opened up for a potential trade. So I'm looking at teams with a lot of cap space and a lot of desperation and a big time need. And immediately I think of the New England Patriots. Immediately I think of the Las Vegas Raiders. I think those are two teams that could fit Terry McLaurin into their books, and he would fit great on the roster, and they would absolutely do it. Watching the game tonight, I thought, man, Terry McLaurin on the other side of Ladd McConkey, that would be incredible. The Chargers have a ton of cap space. And then you think about connections between teams, and you think about the former general manager, or rather assistant general manager of the 49ers is now running the Commanders. That is a deal that could happen. We already saw the Deebo Samuel. In terms of the team connection there, maybe something could get done. The reality is Washington needs to pay Terry McLaurin. It falls like a cliff after him, not just at receiver, but just for receivers in general. It is not a talented enough group for Jaden Daniels to throw to. Terry McLaurin's been one of the 10 best receivers in the league for a long time, and he's held that organization up, and I'm sure he wants to get paid close to top dollar, and they're trying to save a little money on a guy that's getting older, and he's putting the screws to them, and ultimately I think that contract will get done, but other teams could make it interesting. I think they would offer a very good pick for Terry McLaurin, and certainly would offer a better contract than I bet Washington is offering right now. A couple other just little items of news to get through before we get to the fantasy, get to the Hall of Fame. Kolton Miller, the left tackle of the Raiders, signed a big contract extension with them, $42 million guaranteed, very similar to the deal that the Colts got done just a couple days ago for a very good, maybe not top 8 tackle, but a very good tackle in Kolton Miller. One less position for the Raiders to worry about when they have a lot of positions to worry about going into 26 and 27. He'll be around. Noah Fant, who did a rare late free agency tour, chose the Bengals. I think that was a smart decision. Joe Burrow plays for the Bengals. Even if he's going to be behind Mike Gesicki at tight end, that was the best situation that he could put himself into compared to the Saints and the Dolphins. So I think that rounds out the Bengals receiver group, which is really, really talented. We hadn't mentioned on the show the worst news for Kader Kohou, who was the Dolphins' best cornerback on the team. I know he was the slot, but he was the best cornerback on the team. He is out for the season. So I've been talking about how I do not trust that secondary at all, and they look even worse after some injuries in training camp. And then just an update on Isaiah Likely, the Ravens tight end. We thought he was just going to be out for a couple weeks, but he will have surgery on his foot and be out at least 6 weeks. So seems like he's questionable-ish for that week 1 game against the Bills. Man, the NFL is really front-loading those great games. So we got Ravens-Bills on the first Sunday night football of the year. And by the way, happy trails to rugby star Luis Rees-Zammit, who I know a lot of our listeners were really excited. One of the biggest rugby stars in the world. And he came over to try his hand at football, and he was with the Chiefs, and then the Jaguars. Didn't work out for him. He decides, I'm done with the NFL. I'm going back to the sport where I'm apparently one of the best young talents in the entire world. 24 years old, didn't work at football. And, I mentioned that Ravens-Bills game. That's the first Sunday night game of the year. And I do think NBC does its absolute best work during the Hall of Fame game because you feel like it's a Super Bowl. They do such a good job with the production and the presentation. And meanwhile, it's Hendon Hooker and Trey Lance playing at a high school field in Ohio. And it got me really pumped up in a way that most of the preseason probably won't. We'll be covering it all. But it was really great to just see football played again. It was great to see a first-round pick in this game. The Chargers did have their starters out there very briefly, at least a few of them, certainly not at quarterback where Trey Lance started, but a few other ones. Omari and Hampton got out there, had one absolutely electric run in the red zone where you saw the speed and a little more shiftiness than you're used to getting down near the goal line. And then you saw another run where he got out in the open field and man, you thought that he was going to score a touchdown, and instead he got a little hesitant. He didn't always make guys miss that well in the open field on tape, and Rock Ya-Sin takes him down. So in terms of first rounders, that's all we really saw tonight. The takeaways were that Trey Lance looked comfortable for the first time, maybe ever, in an NFL uniform. He is battling for that backup job with the Chargers, so he will play a lot in this preseason. But right now, you got to figure he is behind Taylor Heineke in that battle. But I saw something on Blue Sky, which I agreed with. Victoria Zeller, who is a good follow, said she just never saw Trey Lance look this normal. So it was nice to see Trey Lance just look normal. Yeah, he's younger than Tyler Shuck. He's actually a little younger than Michael Penix. Maybe he can settle in and just be like a normal backup and have a career, which would be an improvement from what we've seen from him so far. I mentioned Isaac Tesla earlier. So that was the 3rd round pick from Detroit, who is just an absolute speed, height, weight freak. Also has great hands. And he had 2 20-yard plus catches from Kyle Allen in the first half of the game. And man, you could see it. The second he got the ball, the juice that he had immediately with a burst made you think, man, we will probably see him as a 4th or 5th receiver make a couple big plays for the Lions this season. Not as consistent a night for the other rookie on the Lions that they really like, 7th round pick, Dominic Lovett, who didn't bring down a catch early in the game, but then he made some nice grabs the rest of the way. I think both of those guys are going to make the team, and they might be really good leverage for the Lions in contract negotiations, not having to give Jamison Williams that much money. If they really like these young guys, you can only pay so many people. That's about it in terms of my real deal takeaways. Both the options for the Lions for backup quarterbacks had bad moments. Kyle Allen threw a pick 6. Kyle Allen threw another interception. He actually looked pretty good otherwise, and he started before Hendon Hooker, who came in, the 3rd round pick from a couple years ago. They've been trying to talk up Hendon Hooker all offseason, and he did not look comfortable in this game. I know the pick 6 he threw at the end of the game was more bad luck. It was an interception where the Chargers defender just ripped the ball away, but otherwise, Hendon Hooker did not look comfortable. Then again, he's playing with a bunch of 2nd, 3rd, 4th stringers, a lot of guys who won't be actually on rosters on Sundays in the fall. But it was very cool to have football back on my television, and very cool to have my friends Silva and Roto Pat join me. Here is our big preview for fantasy football for 2025. All right, I am thrilled to be here with 2 of my absolute favorites in the industry, 2 who I used to be down in the mills just pounding out those Roto World player burbs with Evan Silva and Pat Daugherty. Of course, Evan Silva now with Establish the Run, and Roto Pat, you're still keeping the lights on over at Roto World. I love it.
Yeah, I've been told I can never leave. So after you 2 left, unbeknownst to me, Yeah, I didn't even know I had a contract. I signed a lifetime contract.
And looking at Silva, if you're watching on YouTube, he is like in a dark dungeon. Silva is so all about ball that he doesn't even waste time to like turn on the lights. I love that about him. My inspiration, Silva, for this show, I think you'll like this, was from a text from the nephew of our great friend Chris Wesseling. One of the coolest things, since Wes's death, that I've got to be part of is the fantasy football life of his nephew, Mackie Wesseling. Chris and Mackie were going to do this league together before Chris died. He was joining the league. He was all excited. He would always get his fantasy advice from his uncle Chris, and they had a really close bond over that. And since then, through Phil and the Wesseling family, his nephew now plays in a league with my kids. He freaking won it last year and broke my kids' hearts. But we're always texting. And he texted me the other day. He's always in a draft early. I'm like, don't be in a draft this early. He's like, oh, who should I draft? What should I do? I was like, I don't even know. I haven't thought about fantasy football at all. So I wanted to get it straight from you two, the source. And we'll just do kind of a big picture, first take look at a lot of these fantasy positions. Just trends, everything, and I'll get the expertise. And this is kind of my intro session. And so let's start with quarterbacks, Silva. I think big picture, and we're talking redrafts. We're not getting into the whole best ball, all that stuff. Like we're talking for the average fan. You can a little
all that
bit,
sorcery, the witchcraft.
Yeah, no, it's all great, and you can hit that if you want a little bit. But have you changed your strategy about drafting quarterbacks in redraft over the years? Like right this year, what is your strategy?
Over the years, it has absolutely changed. I remember, back in the day, it was all about late round quarterback. Like that was the way to get value, and people would consistently overdraft quarterbacks. And one of the biggest edges in fantasy became the late round quarterback. I remember you wrote an article a long time ago on Roto World, Greg, about waiting in your draft and drafting two quarterbacks and kind of streaming them against the worst defenses. And that was a winning strategy, whereas people just assume, quarterback's this super important position. But with the explosion of passing, then you could get quarterbacks that were, top 10, even top 8, top 5, really late in drafts. That has changed, though. And that is with the advent of the quarterbacks that run, in addition to putting up prolific passing statistics. And the best two examples of that right now are Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen. And then Jaden Daniels also is potentially capable of that. He was not a prolific passer. Last time he was hyper efficient, but in terms of his overall numbers, but he ran for almost 1,000 yards. And then Jalen Hurts with the tush push, which is not going away. And he can be good as a passer and incredibly productive from a rushing touchdown standpoint. So, and those guys deserve to go early. I mean, Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen should not get out of the third round, I don't think. And Jalen Hurts is like a fourth, fifth round pick, as is Jaden Daniels. And then Joe Burrow belongs in like the sixth and seventh rounds.
Yeah, and you're talking a little bit about, the average drafts, but I tell you, in these kids drafts, the quarterbacks go earlier. In the basics drafts, it goes earlier. I'm looking at the ADP from Fantasy Pros, who kind of averages a bunch of places. So I feel like that's a good one. And yeah, Lamar and Josh are going like late second round, and Jaden and Jalen Hurts might be even in the third round. So if you want them, like you can get them. And it makes sense to me, because to me, it's maybe the one position where just taking them where their average draft position has been, and them hitting about par or a little better the last few years, has been league winners. Like I see it in these leagues my kids do, and I do. Like if you just kind of took Lamar and Josh Allen and Jalen Hurts where they were supposed to go the last few years, there's a lot of league winners there because of that. So there is something about it to me where you're comparing them to some pretty shaky running backs that are available at that spot, or even the wide receivers. And to me, like I feel much better about those four specifically. Like when you draft, Pat, are you ending up with those guys, and what do you think?
Well, first off, just real quick, let me say, in a workforce that included Gregg Rosenthal, Evan Silva, and Chris Wesseling, I was the alpha. I was the 24-year-old alpha amongst all those luminaries of the industry.
You were the funniest. You were the funniest.
Well, thank you for that incorrect praise, but yeah, truly had to pinch myself who I was working with back in the day at rotoworld.com. And Evan laid it out so well, where like late round quarterback is dead, but it's just like a variation of it. I would say now it's either early or late, where you still want to avoid like the muddled middle. There is something to be said for like not having to stream at quarterback too, by the way. Like that's a fringe benefit of early round quarterback that some people don't point out. Like, listen, dude, I'm just in my home league. Like, I don't want to be grinding matchups every week. This is like an inconvenience I don't need, raising my kids and working my job. That's another factor of early round quarterback. But the end of like the Breeze, Brady, Manning, Roethlisberger golden age, there was just seriously like no point in taking a quarterback for like the 10th or 11th round because they were so jumbled together. It was so deep. As Evan points out, that is no longer the case, where there's been a breakaway tier at the top of the true dual threats. And like Cam Newton was kind of the beginning of that. But there's been a lot of Cam Newton successors. Cam was a great passer, but there's been Cam Newton successors who were elite passers and like truly elite at both running and passing. That has just kind of changed the game at quarterback. But then if you miss on that tier, you shouldn't be panicking like, oh, I got to get Kyler Murray. I got to get Baker Mayfield. Like guys in the middle where you should still let them come to you. But another dynamic is that people have just gotten so much smarter and more sophisticated and savvier about drafting, even your home league people, where there were years, Jaden Daniels last year, this kind of did happen. Like dual threats, though, just don't usually fall to like the 11th or 12th round anymore. There's kind of no such thing as a sleeper. So that's been another dynamic. This year, Justin Fields is kind of falling. But so, yeah, the dual threats have broken away. The sleepers don't fall nearly as far as they used to. So early round quarterback is back. But yeah, it's if you miss on that breakaway tier, then don't force it. Go old school late round quarterback.
Another member of the muddled middle is, or at least has been, Patrick Mahomes.
I know it's just devastation. Just
was an elite fantasy producer for his first 4 seasons as a starter, and over the last 2 years, it's been a detriment to draft Patrick Mahomes where he's been going. And I think one of the bigger questions this year is, can he get back to that 40 touchdown sort of level of production? And, I was kind of optimistic about that at one point. Rashee Rice was coming back, looked like he was healthy. Hollywood Brown is healthy. Xavier Worthy has a chance to take a second-year leap. Kelsey is still a fairly usable possession receiver. The offensive line looks really good, especially with Josh Simmons already grabbing that first-string left tackle spot. But then Rashee Rice gets a suspension, or at least a suspension is forthcoming. And so that kind of threw a wrench into that. Can Patrick Mahomes be worth a 5th-round fantasy pick? He certainly hasn't been the last 2 years.
No, he's been a disaster. He's been a league loser. That was one of the topics I was going to throw out is I do think I would take Mahomes this year just for the simple fact of anyone that's gotten drafted that highly year after year after year, you can get them in the late 5th or 6th now. This is the year to do it. And I do think there is something that is beyond the numbers, that is the fact that he knows where he's viewed and he's accepted like taking worse stats for the team. But there is something about this season where I think he's going to be motivated to have better stats. And that is, it's the best receiver group when they're all healthy, and Rashee Rice will be back presumably for the fantasy playoffs when it really matters. And to me, it's the best receiver group they've had. I think Xavier Worthy is underrated in fantasy leagues this year. And you mentioned the offensive line. It's a really good offensive line. So part of me doesn't want to overthink it too much. I would rather have Mahomes in the 50s than Daniels or Hurts probably, or maybe even Lamar, Josh Allen where they are, maybe not. But it is interesting. These two guys, both him and then Herbert, who's more of a QB2, Pat, but these two guys who are viewed as top 5 or 6 NFL quarterbacks that aren't getting the fantasy love this year. And I kind of like both their offensive lines. So to me, it is a year to buy them as opposed to the guys that you mentioned in the middle. I was stunned to see Baker Mayfield and Bo Nix as top 8 fantasy quarterbacks. They're fine, but this is not the year to get them.
Baker, I think it's just because he breaks the modern mold in that he cares about more than efficiency. We're now like everything's so optimized now. The quarterbacks, all they care about is efficiency. They care about avoiding turnovers. He led the league in touchdowns and interceptions. Honestly, kind of a great mix. Like he's taking chances. He's just chucking it up there. Of course, do not think he's going to repeat that. I agree with you that I think we're going to get Warpath Mahomes because he's got to hear what people are saying about it. The dude, too, this is so trivial, but he got a 95 from Madden instead of a 99. Like, are you kidding me? Like,
I put him at number 2 in the last 25 years of just like the best players.
Yes, he is.
And in a career arc of someone who is that good, he can't have too many of these seasons like the last 2, and I don't think he will. So just thinking about his career arc in general, I just can't really buy that it's going to last.
I just worry that now he knows he's playing a one-man game at this point. It's him versus Tom Brady because he's already accomplished more than just about everyone else. He wants to somehow get to 7. He knows he can have success just muddling by. Not that he wants to muddle by, but he knows he doesn't have to like sell out his body or whatever to like get the Super Bowl. Like he can grind out victories. And I do worry if like they've gotten like too comfortable in Golden State Warriors mode. Like, regular season doesn't even matter. Like, who cares? Like, we don't need to throw for 400 yards. But I think
he wants it. I think he wants to be exciting again. I don't know why I think that.
Well, statistically, he was one of the worst deep ball passers in the league last year. And apparently his primary focus this offseason has been to improve his deep ball. And so I don't, whether or not he can accomplish that, we'll see. I mean, he should be. I mean, he used to be one of the best deep ball passers in the league. But, Xavier Worthy is in Hollywood Brown. If those guys are healthy, like those guys are deep ball receivers. So if he starts hitting the deep ball, then, I mean, all bets are off.
Okay, so I'm looking at these ADPs, and we'll move on to running backs after this. Outside of after we get past Mahomes, here are some average draft position guys I kind of like. Kyler Murray as the QB9. I'm still buying. I'm buying that he's going to.
Kyler's only good in fantasy, so that's why I take him in.
But fantasy. I think he could be even better. Jared Goff at QB12. If you are going to be the one waiting and you want to take a chance on your other guy, like. I wouldn't hate a Jared Goff at QB12 and Anthony Richardson at the end of your draft. Like, that's fine with me. I think Goff is a nice, safe piece of like tasty, white bread and butter that you're gonna enjoy in the end. Drake May at QB18. That's kind of intriguing to me. Among the kind of the later QBs, it could be deep, like I said with Richardson. To me, Richardson is just a good value play. If you're getting him at the very end of your draft, I mean, I think it's worth a shot. Give me a QB2 or outside the top 8 QBs that you guys are drafting and looking for.
For me, it's Justin Fields this year. And that's just almost entirely because I think they're going to run him like crazy, because that's the way that Justin Fields would beat up on Aaron Glenn's defenses in Detroit. I mean, every time that they would play, Justin Fields was running all over the Lions. Obviously, Aaron Glenn was the defensive coordinator then, now is the Jets head coach. I mean, Justin Fields has a top 6 fantasy quarterback finish on his resume. He's only 26 years old. During that top 6 finish, he ran for 1,143 yards and 8 touchdowns. If he can be a 20 touchdown pass guy and run for 1,000 yards, which I think is very much within his range of potential outcomes, Justin Fields is going to crush whatever his ADP is. I mean, I don't care if it's quarterback 8, depending where you look, quarterback 12, he will crush that ADP.
Yeah, Evan, he could like win leagues if he threw for like 25 touchdowns, like say really exceeded expectations. Or Fields is the obvious one. I'm in love with him too, because he's the rare dual threat who is falling. Dak Prescott's around QB12. He could lead the league in attempts. Like, I feel, MVP runner-up 2 years ago. Then some really low guys. I mean, Michael Penix, if he's like an attempts or a quarterback stat guy, he could way outproduce QB21. Even Tua, I will say QB22.
Oh, I love Tua QB22. There's going to be yards there. I know it's like the health risk, but at that point,
Greg last year, like the 2012 to 2014 Peyton Manning offense. Like, never throw it deep. Just throw it 1 million times over the middle as quickly and accurately as possible and stack up your stats that way. So I think even Tua is an interesting one.
Yeah, and their schedule in general, like the AFC East schedule last year was hard all around, and this year it's easy all around. I think we'll put a pin in that when we talk receivers, because I think their receivers are undervalued just because there's gonna be yards there. All right, let's get to running backs, but before that, let's take a quick break. Oh, it's Silva season. I mean, it's Roto Pat season too. But I feel like you kind of get the same Pat all year. He loves his football, but Silva's like a machine that you just unplug him from January to August. It's just not the same. Now he's plugged back in. And he's feeling life. Let's talk running back, Silva. I feel like this is where the biggest mistakes happen. Oh, yeah. It's where leagues are won. I still feel like the position gets pushed up too much, but I get why. Strategy-wise, when you look at kind of the big 2 or 3 at the top, I guess, this year is Saquon, Bijan, and Gibbs. And Bijan said that's how his name is really pronounced. It rhymes with Dijon. That's your top 3 there. The next group is Derrick Henry, the big dog, back in first rounds like Silva had all along. He never gave up on Henry and was incredibly right last year. CMC's back there with a little value, a little further in the first round. Ashton Genty, maybe Devon Achane is like sneaking into first round. So they're still going high and they're still going in the second round. Are the running backs back? And kind of give me your overall like view of the position and who are some of your favorites at the top.
Yeah, I think the way that you described it was perfect. I mean, for a guy who's retired from fantasy football, you summed it up real nicely there, Gregg Rosenthal, that this is where leagues are won and lost, no question. It's a position where, you're hoping that you are literally hoping that the player you draft runs into 300 car crashes, is able to run into 300 car crashes over the course of, 17 Sundays, and makes it out alive, because that's what these guys are doing. Saquon Barkley last year, including playoffs, had 482 touches. The last
I'm a little worried. I'm the only person that's a little worried, I feel like.
He's also Jahmyr Gibbs and Bijan Robinson. They were born like a month or 2 apart. They are both 5 years younger than Saquon Barkley. Okay. So for me, there's just enough risk, and I have them all in the same tier, and I have them all as top 6 picks, but I have Saquon Barkley at the end of that tier, and I have Gibbs and Bijan atop it. Right now I have Gibbs number 1. Now, people will say, oh, but we can't find the workload projection for him because David Montgomery's coming back. I think that the Lions, they have one of the toughest schedules in the league. They lost both of their coordinators. I don't think they're going to be as dominant as they have been in previous years. I think they're still going to be a really good team, 10-7 or something like that, but not like a 13 or 14 win team. And they're going to be in more competitive games. And their new coordinator, John Morton, is going to streamline the offense, and he's going to have to play his best players in more competitive situations. And I think that by the end of the year, we'll be talking about Jahmyr Gibbs as the best running back in football.
I love that take from Evan. I also think that dovetails with Gregg's Jared Goff take, where I'm definitely expecting like a bit of the Lions fall off, and they're going to have to really pump up Jared Goff's attempts, probably to a level higher than they're really comfortable with. So I love that take on the Lions. And to me, running back this year writ large, it's definitely as back as it's been in a while, where it almost seems like the running back aging curve has been obliterated, or there's at least been balance restored, or there's still an aging curve. But like in the 80s, 90s, 70s, the truly elite backs like last beyond the aging curve and are productive into their early 30s. Because it was getting kind of strange 10 or 15 years ago. Like 27, 28 was like a hard ceiling at running back. And it's almost like, as the game changed so much, and is it just too much of a young man's game now? Turns out no. The Hall of Fame level talents can still produce into their early 30s. And this year, running back, this feels so much better because, last year it was perceived to be a bad running back draft class. Aside from Bucky Irving, that was very much borne out in fantasy football. This year is so much deeper. There's so many more like 2nd to 4th round picks who are projecting for maybe immediate committee roles with the upside for more. So it's just a deeper playing pool, and that the older guys are producing longer. And we got a much needed talent infusion on the young end, I feel like, this year at running back. So it's a deeper player pool at running back.
That's true. And yet I don't want any of these second round running backs, I don't think. Like, to me, it's a huge drop off from that big 6 we just talked about to begin with, which is Saquon, Bijan, Gibbs, Henry, McCaffrey, who, obviously there's a risk, but it's football. if you can get CJ, if you can get McCaffrey at the end, anywhere in your first round, I'm just going to take my chance and do it. Ashton Genty, too, is in that group for me. And then it's like, man, you're talking about, I know Devon Achane, like per snap, and there's just a lot of questions. At some point, I think I got to go with I think being like a great football player that's extremely consistent matters a lot. And Josh Jacobs has had an up and down career. Achane, I don't know. Like Bucky Irving's a good player, but I'm not putting him in that category when you're comparing these guys and Jonathan Taylor and maybe Chase Brown's in that mix too. And so these are the second round guys. You're comparing these to some of the best players in all of football, these wide receivers, and even throw in Lamar and Josh Allen, that to me, I would just much rather have on my fantasy team going into the year than any of these guys. So if you don't wind up with one of the great running backs that, in your first round, because it just doesn't happen that way. Like I'm cool just waiting and loading up at receiver and running back. Cause you're right. There are then some pretty intriguing, maybe third, fourth, fifth round guys. I'll go to you first with this one, Pat. Like who is a third, fourth, fifth round guy or two that you like?
Well, I'll just say I do love Bucky so much. I know he's undersized, but such a rare rookie combination.
I know, but you're just paying for full value from the 9 incredible games he had. So he has to just do that, or else like there's to me he's getting taken way before like a Ladd McConkey, for instance. You can't Ladd McConkey's not going to have a bad season. He's just not.
No, he's not. But it was such a rare rookie combination of efficiency and actual production. The two games that mattered most, he outtouched Rachaad White 40-3. We're kind of like what Evan was saying, what the Lions might have to do with Jahmyr Gibbs. The Bucs just had to admit Bucky Irving was better than Rachaad White in Week 18 in the wild card round and ride him. They want Rachaad White to still be involved, but I think Rachaad White will be a luxury for when they're like dictating the pace of play. And if it's winning time, if the game's competitive, they're gonna have to really lean on Bucky. I mean, the mid rounds. Omarion Hampton was a guy the fantasy community already loved before the Najee Harris situation became the weirdest situation in fantasy football.
Wait, why is he going in the fourth round? That was like I said, I don't look at these numbers and then I look at them right before a show like this, and it does hit me in a different way than you. To me, that was one of the most surprising things. If I had seen him at overall 18, RB 11, I would have been like, oh yeah, that makes sense. Everyone loves like a totally complete beast of a rookie running back with a great quarterback. Like that would have checked out to me. And instead he's down in the 40s or something. So sign me up for Omarion Hampton. I don't care. I don't care about Najee Harris.
Yeah, that's probably just an ADP artifact too, isn't it, Evan? Where like the post Najee injury reality hasn't really caught up.
Yeah. I mean, in the drafts that I do, Omarion Hampton does not get out of the third round.
Okay.
And that's where he belongs. I think you can make an argument that he belongs on the 2-3 turn. I have him as the RB12 overall. The thing that you guys talked about Bucky Irving earlier. The thing that concerns me about Bucky Irving is Tristan Wirfs' injury. If you look, I mean, he's maybe the best. He's one of the best players in the NFL, not just left tackles. And if you look back at the history of premier tackles in the league and like their on and off splits when they're at, like Lane Johnson's on and off splits when he's out and when he's in, huge difference for the Eagles in terms of production. Trent Williams in San Francisco. You remember how Jason Garrett's offenses in Dallas would completely fall apart whenever Tyron Smith would be out. Like they couldn't deal with it. They couldn't make any adjustments, but I mean that Tristan Wirfs is on those guys' level. And that's the big concern that I have with Bucky Irving. He's way better than Rachaad White, and I do think that Rachaad White is going to cut into his stuff a little bit, but the Tristan Wirfs injury kind of scares me really for everyone in the Tampa offense.
Yeah, I'm with you. And we've learned this over the years. It is unpredictable. It could be one where you don't want to overreact too much. Like if Tristan Wirfs is out there in week 3, which seems like a totally reasonable scenario, then no harm, no foul when it really matters. Who are some of the guys, Evan, you're finding outside maybe the top 10 that you're drafting quite a bit this year?
See, I love Chase Brown, and
Okay.
I he was a guy who was a workhorse at Illinois, and then he came into the league, and in his first year, he was like sort of pigeonholed as a guy that was like maybe like a niche back. But then we saw last year that he could be that extreme workhorse that he was at Illinois. And he averaged, over the final 8 games for the Bengals, he averaged 24 touches per game for over 116 total yards per game and almost a touchdown per game. And I'm really buying the Bengals offense that they're just going to score a ton of points. They just cut Zach Moss. So it's going to be Chase Brown and then Samaje Perine, who's a player that he'll see the field a little bit, but they don't like try to get him the ball. And then Taj Brooks, I think that there's a decent late sleeper for you, the 6th-round pick, Taj Brooks. But Chase Brown is a guy that I think actually belongs in the 2nd round and certainly should not be getting out of the 3rd round.
I'll buy that as a guy who's going to have a ton of receiving value. Like, I might rather have him than Achane, certainly for the price, but just in general on that offense, I just feel like a little safer, just that he's going to last. I'm with you. Some other guys that where they're at, I was intrigued by. Like James Cook really isn't getting that pop off after all those touchdowns. I know it's a good backfield there, but to me, he's just a great football player. He's really good and on a great team. And I know the situation isn't perfect, but wherever he's going, I think I'm going to be fine with it. James Conner, like I buy what they're selling, that he's just going to get almost all the workload there. And then I'm not giving up on my guy, Ramondre. You know, he's down there in the deep 30s. I'd rather have him than TreVeyon Henderson. I don't get quite buying TreVeyon Henderson as a rookie back who I think is going to have a somewhat limited role there, and he's getting taken as like the RB 25. Pat, do you have some guys you're trying to stay away from?
Well, real quick on Ramondre, let's say what worries me.
Any of those?
What worries me is Josh McDaniels. I feel like is a his guys type of guy. Ramondre's not his guy. TreVeyon was his guy.
Why isn't he his guy? Didn't he play great under Josh McDaniels?
That's
Am I crazy?
Oh my God, I forgot. His 5th tour of duty in New England. But he came in, and what's the first thing he tells them to do? Draft a 2nd-round running back. He
fair.
Wants to be like the
That's
next
fair. It's just
Green.
He's so deep. He's a guy that, you know, was getting taken so high that, like, if he's your RB4, that sounds crazy to me. Very
quickly, too, Alvin Kamara finishes the RB5 by average PPR points last year. He's like the RB 18 or 19. He's like Mike Evans, where every year no one wants to draft him because he's old. Then every year his team doesn't have a better idea. The Saints don't have a better idea than giving Alvin Kamara the ball, way too many times, way too many receptions. DeAndre Swift is a guy who literally his entire career has been like one long fantasy disappointment.
You don't want him, you're saying?
No, I'm saying you never do until now, because truly, what do they have beyond DeAndre Swift? Like Roshan Johnson, I feel like is not going to be a huge concern for DeAndre. He's a guy who's disappointed fantasy managers so many times, where I feel like it can maybe finally happen this year for DeAndre Swift. Who do I not want? I mean, Joe Mixon has, of course, become rather radioactive.
I wouldn't have wanted Joe Mixon anyways. I don't want Breece Hall. That's another guy I don't want, just for the price.
I know. Breece, I was like, listen, he's better than Braylon Allen. There's no way it's going to be a 3-man backfield. I will be a 2-man backfield, but the Braylon drumbeat refuses to cease, and it is becoming concerning for Breece Hall, who, is better in fantasy than real life. Let's put it that way. And hasn't even been that great in fantasy of late. So it's getting a little late early for Breece Hall.
If we're moving into the later rounds, there are 3 rookies that I think that stand out. One of them is Cam Scatterboo for the Giants. Now, I'm concerned that the Giants are going to stink, that they might end up starting 3 different quarterbacks over the course of the season. And Tyrone Tracy is good. I mean, he's not going to go away. But Cam Scatterboo is built to capitalize on high-value touches. He can play in the passing game, and he's going to be the guy at the goal line over Tyrone Tracy. He's an awesome football player. I know he runs 4.6 or whatever, but he is an awesome football player. I think anybody that has seen him play even a little bit knows that dude is awesome at football. I think that a guy who might not be as good at football, but is in a great situation and has some Devon Achane in him is Jaden Blue of Dallas, who's started to generate some positive buzz. You got Miles Sanders there. You got Javonte Williams there. Pat mentioned the possibility that the Cowboys could lead the NFL in pass attempts. Like, that's Jaden Blue's game. He had 42 catches last year, 176 touches, scored 14 touchdowns on 176 touches. Hyper efficient, good in the passing game, runs 4.38 at 5'9", 200. Really sexy situation for Jaden Blue.
I love that. Yeah, one of the more surprising things I saw in the ADP that was where Javonte Williams was going, and that he was going ahead of Miles Sanders. For what it's worth, I wouldn't want either, but Miles Sanders is going to be the starter there. It sounds like by all accounts, like. In that Javonte doesn't look great. But I'm with you. Jaden Blue would be more exciting. Brashard Smith for like a really deep league or very end of the draft would not surprise me at all if he is the Kansas City Chiefs like primary receiving back this year. Has a lot of juice. Like Pacheco showed as a 7th rounder, like you could matter pretty quickly in that offense. So he's kind of fun to me. And then just looking at some of the team situations, like, yeah, I was surprised too that ETN is still going that high, because your boy, I remember you loved Tank Bigsby a couple of years ago. You were right on Silva. It's still gonna, I think, be the RB1 there, and I wouldn't worry about Bayshall too. I probably would avoid the whole thing, but if you're taking one, I would take Tank Bigsby.
Two more super quick names, Greg. Mid-round, I love Jordan Mason, actually, who's always been super efficient. They basically anointed him as the goal line back. I think they're going to not pass nearly as much as they have, or people are expecting. Right? I've just not really liked the J.J. McCarthy smoke signals, although they could be changed.
Well, I mean, I loved me some Jordan Mason last year. I actually did draft him along with CMC, saved my season.
So Jordan Mason. And then I do like Woody Marks in the later rounds, even though he could just be like a committee, like pass catcher guy. Just the Mixon signs are not great. I mean, Nick Chubb, they're already coming out like, listen, he's not the same, but he's real tough. And that's not great, the tone with Nick Chubb, and pretty bullish for Woody Marks.
Woody Marks had 261 catches in his college career.
Wow.
Interesting. Okay, so yeah, Texans running back, and I don't know what's going on there, because, yeah, I've heard the same things of Chubb not looking great. I think Mixon, it's extremely concerning that he might never, to me, he's on a do not draft list, period, just because he might not be the same guy or be able to stay healthy. I don't know what they're going to do. They might be someone that looks around at the trade deadline or even after.
After final cut trade deadline.
Yeah, right. Let's look at the wide receiver. So, yeah, I gave away my strategy earlier. Is I feel like if you took 3 receivers in your first 4 rounds, still, I don't know. I feel better about that. I feel good about that. The top 10 receivers, they're so money. In general, however you want to shake them up. Like right now, Chase is going first overall in some leagues, and that's fine. I don't see a particularly crazy difference between him and Lamb and Jefferson and Puka, really. So whatever order, I'm not going to have a super hot take. But when you're getting to a Nico Collins and Brian Thomas Jr. and A.J. Brown are towards the bottom of the top 10, it's like, man, I am going to be happy coming away with A.J. Brown specifically. I think he is going to have an outstanding season, and this is a relative buy low for him. And I'm just going to feel better taking these guys pretty much through the first 3 or 4 rounds than I am taking those rounds 2, 3, 4 running backs. But that's me. Have you kind of changed on that viewpoint, Silva? And where are you looking towards the top of the draft?
Yeah, I mean, at 1 overall and at 2 overall, I tend to lean running back. Just
Me too.
Because,
I still would take those 3 running backs over any receiver, actually.
Yeah. But a lot of people take Jamar Chase 1 overall, as you mentioned, and I understand it. I think that CeeDee Lamb could outscore Jamar Chase. The last time that Dak Prescott was healthy in 2023, CeeDee Lamb was the number 1 overall receiver in fantasy. And again, going back to that expectation that the Cowboys are going to throw the crap out of the ball, that would be good for CeeDee Lamb. I'm with you on Brian Thomas. He's my highest drafted first-round player in the back end of the first round. I think that by the end of the year, we could be talking about him as the best receiver in football. Last year, he was number 6 in yards per route run. The best advanced metric, just if you just want one advanced metric for wide receivers, is yards per route run. As a rookie at age 22, Brian Thomas was 6th in the NFL in yards per route run, catching passes for half the season from Mac Jones in a Doug Peterson offense, where Doug Peterson is out of the league because the league kind of passed him by. And now he's got Liam Cohen, who under Liam Cohen last year, Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, both at advanced ages, had their best yards per route run season of their entire careers. So I think that Liam Cohen is a really, really big deal for him. I think that Trevor Lawrence could have the best season of his career. I expect him to have the best year of his career, and he's going to carry Brian Thomas along with him. Actually, Brian Thomas might be carrying Trevor Lawrence along with him.
Wow. I mean, if Doug Peterson is a fan of the show, Silva, and he's watching this and he just hears like a classic withering Silva takedown that the league has passed him by, like, how do you think that's going to make him feel?
Doug was a crazy case where that he was super ahead of the curve on like two things. And then the rest of the league really caught up really fast. And Doug was like, I don't have a third idea.
Actually, it's a great, like, you're making a joke on some level, but it's an outstanding football point over who becomes legendary, especially as coaches, and who doesn't. Like, a lot of coaches have one or two moves, and then Brandon Staley's like, no, well, this is the defense I coach. And everyone's like, yeah, but everyone's adapted to that. Like, what's your next move? You have to keep changing. And like McVay, his old boss, is a great example of that. Like, he is always evolving, always adapting. Like, you got to have multiple ideas. Speaking of which, you mentioned yards per route run, Silva. I mean, Puka Nacua last year ranks among the greatest receivers of all time. For his first two seasons, he is like maybe the greatest receiver of all time, yards per route run. So I'm not that worried about Devontae getting there, impacting him. So he's another option, like pretty much in the middle of the first round. Who you taking, Pat, in general? Anywhere, go anywhere you want in the first like 30, 40 picks that are on a lot of Pat teams.
Well, I'll say my in general take on wide receiver, by the way, is that you're absolutely right about like the top 10, or I would say even 12 wide receivers, where a really deep wide receiver one crop. And then beyond that, though, I feel like this is a year, I've never had a year where I didn't like, where every ADP looks bad to me. Basically.
Really?
Yeah, I'm like, oh, T. Higgins, we're doing T. Higgins, wide receiver 13 again, huh?
Okay, that I agree with. All right, let's go through them.
We're doing that yet again, huh? Like, wow, Marvin Harrison, we're doing that yet again, huh?
I'm good with that. 14. Where he is at the 40 spot, I'm good with that. That's
Marvin
good.
Harrison's whose innovation was to get slower and bigger after his disappointing rookie year.
He wasn't that bad, and it's all about value. Now he's going like 3 rounds later, 2 rounds later. I'm good with that one. All right, give me more.
So many, like JSN, who I actually like, I didn't like,
Love
and then
JSN.
I started to like.
Yeah.
He's a wide receiver 17, which I really like JSN. Every sign, though, out of Seahawks camp is like, we're never passing the ball again. Like,
yeah, but he's the best.
One year.
He's the best guy on the team by far, so I'm okay with that.
If they let him play like a true inside-out game, I'd be excited about JSN again. But like Terry McLaurin's the wide receiver 18. Rashee Rice is the wide receiver 19. Mike Evans, undead zombie, wide receiver 20. I don't mind that one. Xavier Worthy, who I like it's a lot of projection to be the wide receiver 21. Teteroa McMillan, sight unseen, wide receiver 22 with your guy. Bryce
Don't like that one. I like
feel like
Worthy.
any wide receiver ADP someone mentions to me, I'm like, oh, I don't like him there. And I'm not loving the overall feel, and I hate the word vibe, but the vibe at receiver this year.
I feel better about most of those guys. I think Worthy has a sneaky high ceiling. I guess I'm looking. Fantasy Pros has him, wide receiver 25 for what it's worth, in the 50s somewhere. I mean, he doesn't have a lot. To me, he doesn't have a lot of heat, considering he, was their best receiver by far down the stretch, and like is racking up. I count those catches in the Super Bowl. He had 75 yards before that fourth quarter in the Super Bowl too. He was the man there. Like Garrett Wilson's going fairly late. Devontae Adams is going fairly late, and I think I'm buying Devontae Adams. And then outside the top 10, and I'm curious what you think about these two guys, Silva. Like, to me, Ladd McConkey and Tyreek Hill have wide receiver 1 or 2 upside. Like, I don't think that's that crazy. And that's where I'm talking about, like, man, receiver seems pretty deep. If they're going as like 11 and 12, like both of those guys to me could have monster seasons.
Back to yards per route run, Ladd McConkey as a rookie finished 4th in the NFL in yards per route run. And over a 17-game span, including playoffs, he had 91 catches for 1,346 yards and 8 touchdowns. And I think that the arrow is still pointing up on him. Tyreek Hill scares me, and he's one of the biggest like conundrums of the fantasy football season. If you read Matt Harmon's recent reception perception breakdown of Tyreek Hill, I mean, it will put the fear of God in you. I mean, Matt Harmon is like, this is clearly a player in decline. He's got issues with Tua. I mean, Tua even like addressed that again recently at the start of training camp, that like we have to repair our relationship. I mean, Tyreek Hill is 31 years old. You know, everything still looks pretty good on paper. I mean, this is a super condensed offense. They're going to throw the ball. And Tyreek Hill, what he ran like a super fast 100-yard dash or 100-meter dash or whatever recently. He still has straight line speed. I say, you know, he definitely still has straight line speed. I mean, Darrell Green was – guys that are fast keep their speed. Deshaun Jackson was still fast for forever. Darrell Green was winning the fastest man contest at the Pro Bowl, which, by the way, can we bring that back, please? At like age 43 years old. Guys that are fast stay fast. Like, I know that Tyreek Hill could still run fast in a straight line. It's all the other stuff. He was not winning against coverage. He was not winning his routes nearly as often last year as he has historically.
He admitted and has said it many times this offseason that he wasn't trying his hardest last year, that he came in out of shape. It was all this stuff. And usually I really don't buy into too many offseason narratives, but this is a guy who's had 4 or 5 first-team All-Pros that's going to be in the Hall of Fame one day, that he's always played at a high level, but he knows his chance for one last big contract is this year. It's a contract year for him. It's very likely his last one in Miami. He wants to get back to Kansas City. I just think there's going to be yards there with Tua. To me, I am buying the narrative that it's just you're going to get the best out of Tyreek Hill, and last year was a little bit more of like an effort and conditioning thing, and that makes sense. If you're watching on YouTube, we thank you, by the way, and we hope you subscribe and leave some comments. Do that on iTunes as well. It really helps us out. But if you are watching on YouTube, you'll notice that Roto Pat just ducked out. Like, the heat was too much for him, frankly. Like, me getting back in the fantasy arena was making him feel a little less than. I think also with his old boss, Silva, because in theory I was his boss, but pretty quickly by the time Pat was there, I was doing PFT, and
I thought that I hired him. You hired me.
Maybe you did. I'm probably just making things up. I was still there. I was still at NBC. Right. I was like in an overseer role, but you're absolutely right. Silva was the one who hired him, got it done, and what a job. But no, Pat's internet apparently went out, so we're gonna finish this thing off. We're right at the end, anyways. I'm gonna give you a list of guys I think are too high, Silva, and you let me know, and then tell me some guys you think are too high. T. Higgins, I agree with Pat on that one. Rasheed Rice, I just would rather get Worthy and not deal with the suspension. T. Mac, Tetsuroa McMillan, there's a lot of ifs there. Cooper Kupp, not buying it. Feel like a wasted pick. Chris Godwin this year kind of feels like a wasted pick. Just don't want to deal with it. Stephon Diggs, Jack Besh, those are a couple other guys that feel like wasted picks for me. And then some of the later guys like Devontae, I'm buying a little bit of a Devontae rebound. I'm interested in Travis Hunter at the price that he's going at. And then maybe the guy I would draft the most at this very moment in the entire NFL, Silva, is Rashid Shaheed. Because to me, I think he has like pretty clear top 20, top 25 fantasy receiver upside, maybe even floor if he's healthy, and a bigger role coming to him. And so I'm taking Rashid Shaheed, who's going like wide receiver 50 or something totally insane. You guys
dogged T. Higgins so hard. I mean, RotoPat even said, T. Higgins, ADP wide receiver 13. What are we doing?
You said we're doing this again.
That's exactly where I have T. Higgins ranked, at wide receiver 13.
Well, as you may have noticed, I did that and then I just disappeared.
When T. Higgins and Jamar Chase were on the field together last year, T. Higgins had more targets than Jamar Chase.
Well, Evan, the problem is what you hit the phrase, they're on the field together, which they just never are because he's always hurt. I mean, no matter what. And now he got paid. He's. I feel like he's a classic.
There's a 213 pass attempt sample of them being on the field together, and T. Higgins had 107 targets, and Jamar Chase had 106. A guy that I love this year, and I'm getting a lot of pushback from the nerds that we employ at Establish the Run. they hate this guy because they can't fit anything into their spreadsheets. And if they can't fit it into their spreadsheets, then they can't do it.
They don't know ball, frankly. They just know
don't
numbers.
Know ball.
They don't know ball.
You know who's good at ball is Ricky Pearsall.
I agree.
And also the floodgates are kind of opening for him. The seas are parting for Ricky Pearsall. We've got Jawan Jennings dealing with injuries and a contract dispute. Deebo Samuel is gone. And Brandon Ayuk, I mean, I don't know when he's coming back. And Ricky Pearsall was a first-round pick in the draft. I think they drafted him to eventually replace Deebo Samuel, which that's a really fun fantasy role. If he can even be 80% of what Deebo Samuel was, Ricky Pearsall is going to crush. And again, if you read Matt Harmon's reception perception on Ricky Pearsall, over the last month of the season, this guy got shot last year, okay? He literally got shot and missed like everything. He finally gets gets healthy, and he crushed against man coverage down the stretch. So if you can give me 80% of Deebo Samuel and a guy who wins against man coverage with all this opportunity in a Kyle Shanahan offense, with Brock Purdy coming off maybe the most underrated quarterback season in the NFL, I think Ricky Pearsall can be an absolute smash as like a 7th round pick.
You convinced me. I'm in.
All right.
Pat, are you doing okay? Yeah, by the way, Pearsall is going like in the wide receiver 40, 45 territory behind Jawan Jennings, who already has a calf injury, again, has the contract situation, is going behind some of the guys that I said I have zero interest in, like Kupp and Diggs. And I would maybe take Pearsall, like in terms of his ceiling, or even over a guy like Rome Odunze. That's a good shout out, because I think what Pearsall already showed, and he's done it at practice too, from everything that I've heard, is like he is an NFL player. It is a question whether he's going to be like a solid 2-3 or 2, or can he be like a wide receiver 1? But that'll be great value for him, and the opportunity is just absolutely insane. You couldn't take the heat, Pat, of our conversation, and you had to duck out. So I leave you with the final word. Any wide receiver hot takes before we get out of there, whether it's like a middle, later round guys that you love, that you don't love, before you leave in shame.
It's a mid-round guy. I can't say I either love or hate him, but he's kind of the wide receiver version of DeAndre Swift, where he's become an annual disappointment to fantasy managers. Calvin Ridley, I just don't think people are prepared for how much more the Titans are going to pass than they did last year. And it might be erratic and scattershot, like how much higher quality the passing is going to be, even if there are a lot of turnovers mixed in from Cam Ward, where it just seems like Calvin Ridley could be like a this time it counts guy this year. He's burned us so many different times, but he's the lead receiver for an offense that could be so much better. And I really like the 2 Bills guys, Khalil Shakir, who was like a top 36 guy last year. I mean, maybe he won't get a whole lot better, but I feel like he could still get better. They're talking about him getting better. They need him desperately. And also Keon Coleman was kind of getting hot before he got hurt last year. He'd stacked together 2 or 3 decent games. Then he got injured. He came back and didn't do anything down the stretch. But he's someone they need really, really bad. He basically does not have an ADP. I mean, he's got a very late round ADP. He is being drafted, but he's like a wide receiver 55. He's actually going right around your guy, Rashid Shaheed, who I do also really like this year. But I feel like looking to the Bills is a good place. Maybe looking at the Titans and Calvin Ridley. No one's going to want to draft Titans. No one ever wants to draft Calvin Ridley because all he's ever done is lose them fantasy leagues. But those are 2 good places. I mean, do we like Trey Harris for the Chargers, or are they going to retreat too much?
I mean, we'll see how camp goes, but like a guy coming from an offense that like doesn't necessarily translate, or not. Everything is so unpredictable with these rookies. Like Dante Thornton kind of clearly seems better than Jack Besh in Las Vegas. And I haven't heard a lot about Trey Harris. It hasn't been like overly positive there. So I think you got to see how August, just the ceiling doesn't seem that high to me. Shakir, I'm totally with you on Shakir. That's a good shout out. I do like a little, I do like the Jordan Addison, Jalen Waddle values for where they are as like two
enormous
of the better
values, both
like
of them.
they're just like better football players, for instance, than Calvin Ridley. The opportunity is obviously better than for
Don't
Calvin
get me
Ridley.
wrong, Cal's not good. It doesn't matter though.
He's not bad though. At a wide receiver 31, he's solid enough. But I like Addison and Waddle to get more yards. We did it. We'll talk tight end some other time. This was just the intro to fantasy for the season. We're not gonna totally say goodbye to fantasy because we got about a month left of drafts. It is Silva season. It's Roto-Pat season. Everyone check out Silva at Establish the Run. Him and my old coworker as well, Adam Levitan, the Wizard of Oz over there at Establish the Run. He's the man. And of course, Roto-Pat still holding it down at Roto World. Love you guys. Appreciate you guys both coming on with me. That's it for this great week of shows on NFL Daily. We will be back on Sunday evening. We're posting these shows with Nick Shook, where we do notes all around the AFC. So we're going to hit all 32 teams over the two shows, Sunday night and Monday night. But yeah, as you heard on the top of the show, we had an actual freaking football game. It's back.